Um, Ideally for us, for the shopping center, it would be fantastic if the shopping center would be able to open as many checkpoints and many access as possible, because that would encourage easier movement and more customers to flow into the shopping center. There are two key concerns. Number one is by opening more checkpoints means more resources that will be required to put those checkpoints in place. Each security guard costs an average about $3,500 a month, so you can almost imagine by placing one guard there, this would be considered a pretty high cost on the shopping center side. So that's one. And also again, restricting the access means easier contact tracing. It also means that we're able to funnel movement, restrict them to location where we're able to monitor better. So those are the two reasons. And I think for the time being, we're able to do so. We'd like to, but we won't be able to do so for now. Well, this is obviously coming from a resident. This is regards to our program where we've actually stopped delivery parcels going up to level 8. I'm going to admit that at this point in time, I've actually assessed the area myself. I think as from a security standpoint, we can improve them. We can actually make some improvements there. We've actually already gathered, we thank you for the feedback, and so we've actually gathered this just 2 hours ago and discussed the security, and the team is going to look at how we're going to look at how we can further strengthen in terms of the barricades to ensure that people won't be able to simply walk into the areas where we are keeping these parcels. I think they will probably going to increase security patrol presence in those locations. And again, this is something that we feel that it has worked tremendously well, so we definitely want to keep this going. Well, I'm not sure in particular what we mean by helping residents to track parcels. Obviously, if the expectation here is similar to what online delivery or logistic companies can do, that would be something where we're able to do that. But internally, obviously, right now, this is a very new facility that we had just set up, and we really had to work with POP and their team over a very short period of time. We had to set this situation up. We had to train them, and we agree and we admit that they are still a little bit rough around the edges. As far as locating, it's going to take a little bit of time. But as I said, the system actually does work. We've seen less congestions, less risk being put into the common corridors and common lifts. We are looking into it to see how we can improve faster tracking and faster recovery of parcels when anyone wants to go there and collect. Just remember that this is actually a free service at this point in time. And we are really doing all we can. So we hope to see yet another leap of improvements next week after the feedbacks we receive. But thank you for letting us know that. Right. This will be quite a mathematical question, so I'm just gonna give it to you in a simple form. We're gonna have to assume that in both residence and the condo that we is on a 100% occupancy rate. So if we take that, there are about 250 residential units, of which we usually use a population equivalent ratio, this is called PE ratio, of about 4 people per unit. Okay, this is actually quite a high PE ratio. So based on that, you will see an equivalent of about 1,000 residents living in the condo if it was at 100% occupancy rate. As for the 129 office, 129 office, we call it 129 because it's actually 129 offices. We usually use about 10 people per office. So based on that, you will see an approximate equivalent of about 1,290 people working in the office. So as far as population between residents and office, they are pretty close. However, we have not taken into account on visitors. Office attracts a lot of visitors that comes from meetings. So that is something that has not been accounted for. For this part, we would first like to address the area of senior citizens and definitely anyone who lives in a condo that has mobility issues, and we definitely understand after we had implemented the sort of lift movement controls where lift 11 was designated to the residents that for some of these occupants who are under those categories will find it very difficult to move around, particularly using those lifts to get to level G. So for that, we really apologize, which is why I think we have actually discussed in detail regards to the changes we're going to make. And we also understand the concept of the seasonal, and whoever pointed this out to us is absolutely correct. It is seasonal, and I'm going to show you a little bit of math to kind of go through how we kind of did the calculations, which brought us to why the lift 11 was designated, and then J1 and J2 was then reserved for the 129 user. I'm going to show you a couple of maths, and then after that I will go on to explain what are the changes we will be making that you will see that happening from Monday onwards. What we did was we looked at 129 office, and if they had 1,290 people working at any one time based on the population ratio that we see there, and assuming there are 4 lifts, that means we assume we have implemented 3 people per lift due to the restriction or due to social distancing. So we're going to be able to see 12 person that we can move per trip, okay, at any one time. Now, if it's 12 people we can move, assuming 1,290 people were to show up in one go, based on 12 person per trip, you divide 1,290 by 12, we will see a total of 107.5 total trips that has to be made. And if the lift travel time, which we have timed, is approximately 3 minutes to move from G up to level 7, this is an average sort of time travel per lift, right? We're going to see a total, in terms of total trips, all right, expressed in minutes will equate to 327.5 minutes, which is equivalent to about 5.3 hours in order to move 1,290 people in one go. What that means is that if everyone shows up, the last person standing in the queue will need to queue for an average about 5.3 total hours. Whoever provided us with the feedback and said that the lifts are seasonal is correct. The condo, on the other hand, has people moving up the lifts throughout the day. That means we were already aware that people generally use the lifts at lift 11 throughout the day. That means we will not anticipate heavy congestions, because in terms of movement it will be spread out. As compared to the 129 office, our greatest fear would be congestion, because it is seasonal, because people only primarily come in during the morning, and people come in will be using the lift during the lunch, and also during the time when they exit, when they go home. So because of the fact that 129 is seasonal, that's why we had dedicated those lifts in order to manage the congestion so that we can still maintain social distancing. And so just to kind of further elaborate, so if assuming 50 people were to come at one time, 1,290 people coming would not be possible. But let's assume 50 people were to go into the J1 and J2 all in one go. Based on our earlier calculations, it would take at least 12.5 minutes waiting time. That would be the waiting time for an average for one person queuing to go up to 129 office. And that's for 50 people. If those numbers double to 100, the waiting time would become 25 minutes. Okay, so this is our key concern. It's because it's seasonal, because office tend to come all in one go during those specific times. We were very concerned about those congestions, and we want to make sure that at any point in time, social distancing can still be in place. Right, in order to answer that, I'm just going to build on to the sort of math that we've shown earlier. And again, we have received many feedbacks over the lifts that we have done. We know that there's a great deal of people who are not happy with what we've done. The challenge is also you have to take into consideration that we have had some people who prefer dedicated lifts. And these dedicated lifts means that they don't want it to share, and this is very obvious from one feedback. In fact, it's not one. Many residents do feel the need that if there was a lift that could be dedicated to the condo users, that and they know that the possibility of sharing this with anybody else that are not residents related, they will feel a lot better. The truth is we are not able to do that, so we've actually worked out a new plan, and I hope that this would work well and would sit well with our residents. Essentially, starting from next Monday, this will be our new practice. Okay. J1 lift will be open for the residents' use. All right, J1 lift will be open for the residents' use, but it will be shared with the officers. Those residents who prefer convenience will be able to use J1 lifts. There are 2 lifts. For those residents who preferred not to share, we're going to maintain lift 11, dedicated only for residents' use. Okay. However, for the J1 lifts, during a typical day, if we ever see the queue ever exceeds or overwhelmed by a sudden explosion of people queuing at the J1 or J2, then we will then close off the use of J1 lift for the residents temporarily until the congestion is relieved, and then we will reopen J1 lift for residents' use. If we dedicate J1 lifts, number one, our key concern is that we won't be able to use this lift to provide access for the 129 office. That is one key area concern. Because if you quit switching back and forward, the lifts won't be able to handle that level of programming. It will not be good for the lifts. And again, I hope that the residents will take this as a positive step forward and maybe try this out, and let's see how that goes. I think by now, since I've already answered the earlier question, we've already introduced the new arrangement for the lifts. One of the reasons why we introduced it, because yes, we do see that a lot of people has not yet sort of fully come back to work at the 129 office, and essentially we did over prepare, and we don't know what the situation will be like after Hari Raya, which is why I think the earlier sort of my second proposal for next week for as a trial would kind of deal with these challenges. But in short, to kind of answer that question, we haven't seen much queue because not many people has actually returned to work yet. The sort of short answer to that is no. I think as far as management is concerned, we need to see where the areas we can mitigate risk. And in this particular case, we've already closed off a lot of facilities at the residence floor, facilities like the playground, the gyms, meeting rooms. Even for the mall, we've closed off a lot of public facilities like the parenting rooms, and as far as us enforcing our position to tell parents not to have their children run about, that would really be an impossible job for us. It puts us in a very awkward position. As a parent myself, I think being at home is definitely very, very challenging. I would imagine there are certain guidelines that ministry has actually issued out. Parents should try to use those guidelines. And at the end of the day, if children are going to be going out, I think you've got to make sure that they are properly protected. Social distancing is something that needs to be done. You got to wash your hands. So I guess as a management, we're not in a position to enforce, nor to kind of tell, to say what's right and what's wrong here. Okay, yeah, we have received several sort of requests for dialogue, and there are actually quite a good reason why we haven't done that. Instead, we've actually looked at this whole communication system, the 7-day cycle broadcasting, as a better approach. Is for one simple reason. We don't actually believe that the dialogue will be productive. Um, for occupants who have been sending in feedback, suggestions, complaints, what you don't see is the number of feedbacks that we have received, and they really do range across the spectrum. We've seen some pretty intense complaints. We've seen some pretty good suggestions. We've seen varying opinions about what's right and what's wrong. Um, as a property manager, we believe that we understand the building better than anybody else. All right, we know how the lifts work. We're able to consult with engineers. We're able to consult with technicians to understand in terms of the lifts how things work. We're able to consult with department heads who are in charge of certain operations like housekeeping, disinfecting procedures, so on and so forth. So we know how to operate. So whenever we receive feedbacks, the first thing we have to do is whatever suggestions is brought in, we have to examine and assess from a technical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, are all those things feasible before we even decide whether that's something that we could make changes to. And so the last thing is, if we carry out a dialogue and put a bunch of people in a room, the last thing we want to see is everyone sort of arguing over each other over why they think their approach may be right. So instead, the management has the hard job of actually receiving these feedbacks and then weighing across them and then cross-referencing them to our operational feasibility part and see what works and what doesn't work. We don't want to put any MC members or don't want to put any occupants in a room where they start arguing with each other. So in order to sort of protect and keep things focused, keep things productive, we find this is the best means to handle things. Essentially, you have the elected committee members, and within that elected committee members, there is a chairman, there's a treasurer, and there's a secretary. The chairman obviously is elected in order to chair the meetings. Collectively, this committee plays two key roles. They provide oversight to ensure that things are done properly, but also they provide a very representation of the occupants of Jaya One, where they work in consultation with the property manager. And so I would say in most cases, decision-making process is not about level of authority, but the process of decision-making is quite often done through consultations, done through experiences. And so when you refer to the management committee, they work in consultation with us, but you have to understand we only meet with the committees 6 times a year, all right? Because they are volunteering their own time. So they are also very reliant on the property managing agent, people like us, to manage the day-to-day affairs of Jaya One. And so when does it require a situation where some big decisions requires, whether it's an EGM or an AGM, to pass in order to make those big decisions? Well, essentially, when things get enacted into what we call the building bylaws. So every year during the AGM, for those who attend, you will remember that we do actually have a segment where we put out the bylaws. And from there it gets voted, and then the approved version of the updated bylaws becomes something that as a rule where everyone have to follow. In the case of the MCO or COVID-19, everything that we have done since day one to where we are now, none of it is permanent. It's still work in progress. And until such time we get to that level where we do see the practices where it is perfect, whereby everyone is happy with the arrangements, we don't see any more feedbacks and complaint, and if there is no vaccine, and if social distancing will continue to remain for the rest of our lives, then we have no choice to put some of the practices here, this is what we're experimenting, permanently into our building bylaws. But until we get there, until we get to a position where we see that these these practices become a new norm, then we would recommend for the management committee to adopt and propose to be put into an EGM for an approval. Right, with regards to this question, I would love for an authority or anyone out there to give me a handbook as to how we need to manage our own situation here, whether it's lifts, whether it is prevention, mitigation, contact tracing, and so on and so forth. I would love to see and receive one of those manual handbooks because it would be easier to follow this handbook, this guide. Unfortunately, there isn't. And so, as much as I wish for something like this to exist, it doesn't. And I have to say, for us, it's really relying on experiences. It's relying on looking at what other places are doing, but also making reference to the fact that our building is unique. And because our building is unique, we can only see what works here, may not work somewhere else. So, the short answer to this question is that we're still figuring things out. We're still testing things out. My only assurance I can give to all the occupants out there is that we are going to be here continuously managing this process, making and introducing improvements, ensuring that the safety is always there, mitigating all risk, and most importantly, social distancing will continue to be in place, even if it's at the inconvenience for some of us here. I hope everyone find these broadcasts useful, and I believe as far as management response is concerned, we are probably the only management that's doing this, and I hope that everyone appreciates the hard work that we put in. We get that we don't often get things right, but I hope that you will trust the system and continue to communicate through the official communication channels we've outlined, so much so that we are setting up an online feedback channel now. It's available through our website, and you'll be able to click on that and you can actually provide online feedback if you like. So on top of the official sort of response, which is using the email, phone calls, we're adding a online form that you can fill up. So we are very focused on keeping communication as precise as possible, and we hope that the feedbacks will continue to come back, because this is what we use to gauge whether we are doing things correctly. That's what we're going to gauge whether feedbacks, whether what we put out there works or don't work. So, but from an overall perspective, the management would like to apologize if there has been any inconvenience that we have caused. And so, in the meantime, I want to say, thank you for tuning in. I like to say, stay safe, stay at home, and most importantly, help us stay ahead of the curve. Thank you.